Three, two, one.
Here we go!
Welcome to the North Carolina Youth and Government YAGcast. We've got a special edition of our media podcast with another alumni spotlight interview. We're doing something new for our youth and government program, and we're interviewing alumni to get a sense of what they did in the program, what they're up to today, and lessons they've learned along the way. My name is Megan Hoyt, but everyone in this program calls me Boz. And today I'm thrilled to be co-interviewing alongside Alicia Welch, an associate justice in the Court of Appeals. And we are excited to be in conversation today with Joseph Ford. Today, Joseph lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, and works as an implementation associate at Debtbook. Joseph graduated twice from Wake Forest University with his Bachelor of Arts in History and a Master of Science in Business Administration and Management from the School of Business. During his time in youth and government, Joseph also served as an associate justice and was a member of the Parkland High School delegation. Joseph, hello, how are you?
Doing well, glad to be here.
Yeah, we are super excited that you've been able to join us today and just really excited to be in conversation with you. One of the things we've really enjoyed talking to alums about just right off the bat is their time in the program because we know it's changed over the years and looks different than it does just even a few years ago in some cases. But I want to ask the question by thinking about like you can tell us as much about your time in the program as you'd like. You ended up as an associate justice, but I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about like your first introduction to youth and government or like the first step that you took on your YAG journey.
Definitely. It's funny. I remember my very first introduction to the program. Actually, my mom found out about it. We were members of the YMCA. I felt like she found out about it through the Y. We went to a meeting at the Central Y or the Williams G. White YMCA at the time. I believe I was in 10th grade. And the meeting, I don't even know if it was an interest meeting or what, but there were a couple people there just talking about the program. And I remember leaving that meeting and thinking, this sounds great. Like I'd love to get started and participate. From there, that's where I remember meeting you, Megan. I remember meeting you. I was at Paisley at the time. I believe you were at Wake Forest at the time, and it was just great. Really did because we were just starting a delegation at Paisley. I believe I don't know if we had one before that year. I believe it was around 2011, 2012. So definitely it was great to get a group together, as well as we joined up with the Parkland delegation that year as well. So just real great to get an introduction to the program that way.
Yeah, I love that. It's so neat to hear how programs start at different high schools because sometimes, you're affiliated with the Y or you're affiliated with only your high school delegation too. So I love that that was sort of you had a little bit of both, it sounds like. Yeah, yeah. So what would you, how did you get involved in the judicial program? We know that a lot of times students often like start with the legislative just because maybe like everyone's doing that. But I know Paisley and Parkland have always had really strong judicial program participation as well. So how did you decide that that was the route that you wanted to go?
I remember leaving that meeting that I just mentioned and think like, wow, I really want to be involved. But then I had the thought of, I don't have an idea for a bill. Um, and I don't really know too much about the legislative side. I had a little bit of experience at that time on the debate team in school as well. And so judicial seemed like an easy transition for me, of having different cases and kind of, reading through the case and, kind of being on different sides of it. Judicial seemed like it made much more sense for me personally.
Hmm. That totally resonates with me. I've never been the Ledge person. I love the program, but judicial is really where my heart calls to. Can I ask you, what is one case that you remember from your time in the program?
That is a great question. I remember a case, um, it was really around like larceny. There was a file. Uh, excuse me if I don't remember the details of it, but someone had broken it. This was the question, whether they'd broken into an office space and had taken um a hard drive, like a CD or a file of some data. And the question was whether it was a crime, whether they had the access to do that. whether it was, whose property was it? Did they have were they trespassing? Was it larceny? Those are the questions we were thinking about.
Sounds amazing.
That's
Love
really
that.
exciting.
Mhm.
I love that you still remember. Like lots of folks like do, right? Because it is, I mean, you spend so much time and effort really like preparing, especially the judicial side. Like, I mean, just learning case law in general. I'm just always so impressed with our judicial participants for doing that. Um, I would love to ask you a little bit about your journey to choose to become an associate justice and like how do you decided to run for that office? A lot of students I think are maybe on the fence about running, and so I'm wondering if you could just tell us like what pushed you to do it, what was motivating you to want to take on that leadership role, and then like what benefits did you get out of being an associate justice?
Running for the associate justice position wasn't on my bingo card. It wasn't something that I came into the weekend knowing that I was going to do. Um, but I remember it was my junior year. It was my second year at this point. And the weekend was coming to a close. And, it was at the time where, elections were coming up. And I was just reflecting on my experience, just knowing that I had another year left, and knowing that I'd been through the program on the judicial side twice now, just thinking I've enjoyed this, but what more can I get out of the program? But also, too, I felt like I was encouraged to run. I don't remember who in particular. I did have some friends who I knew that were running. Um, so I do know it was a small group, and it was like, you should run too. And I felt, why not? So I didn't have,
Yes.
some people kind of campaign and they have flyers and stickers and campaign messages. Whereas for me, when it was time for, people to get into the front of the room, I did and presented my case, and I'm fortunate that I was, elected to become an associate justice for the following year.
Wow, that's an amazing experience as well. Just to get up and be able to do that. I see you employing your Court of Appeals skills already in your associate justice position. Just amazing.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Is there like any special memories that you still think about, or even just like funny stories that you still remember from your time in the program?
I do. I think it was really funny. I mean, first, that senior year, I mean, I think I really built a closer bond to the other students in the program, being an associate justice, having to go for, you have a couple of meetings before you have the big weekend in Raleigh in February, of really just kind of getting things together and taking more of a leadership role. Um, but a fun thing I remember is the Friday fun night. Definitely that was a lot of fun. I was just amazed the first time I had saw it, where there were so many. Um, one year we just had like inflatables, like floaties. I don't know. There was like a dance go. It was just so much there, and it was just so much fun just to have new friends and just enjoy the time with them.
Exciting. Yeah, I think students really love that time to decompress. Like it's really go, go, go all day long. And then you're with your program area people, so it's really, yeah, I like those evening events, I guess,
Yeah.
too. Um, Super fun. I just thanks for that. Just sharing a little bit about what your time was like in the program and what motivated you to want to do more. We'd love to sort of pivot into where you are today and what you're doing now. So I know that you're in Charlotte, and about I think like a month in, right, to a new job. So I'd love for you to tell us just a little bit about like what you do and particularly like what's really interesting to you about the work that you do.
Yeah, so right now I'm an implementation associate at Debtbook. So on our implementation team, I really work with new customers that come on to so Debtbook is a software company, um, really in the accounting space to help customers with their leases, with their subscriptions, as well as their debt. A lot of the customers are local governments, so municipalities, cities, counties, and a lot of and universities as well. Um, there's new standards that they have to adhere to when it comes to keeping track of their leases, when it comes to keeping track of subscriptions for the year and reports. And our system helps them do that seamlessly. That tracks everything to the cloud. So one thing that's really interesting to me and the reason why I took this job is the ability, I wanted to speak to people, which sounds kind of silly when you boil it down, but the people meaning externally of my questions were, so working at a company, we're solving a problem. So what problem are we solving? And my question is, how well are we solving it? And I wanted to be part of the process to help that um, through people through that process. So personally, I don't have any customers or clients right now. Still definitely in the training process, getting up on the system, different accounting standards. But definitely, it's great to see my colleagues, and I'm really looking forward to very soon having customers of my own, learning what their pain points were, and really seeing the difference between how they kept track of a lot of their data and documents before and what them signing onto our system and how much simpler and easier that will be for them moving forward.
It's so interesting that you have sort of found your way into a space where you can still work with like local government and municipalities. I mean, I'm sure the clients could range in a lot of different ways, but I feel like that's an interesting tie-in, and I'm curious, for as you obviously you're a month in, so you're still, getting a lot up to speed and everything. But I'm curious if you think you'll like gravitate toward those clients or if you are still interested in like work with the government or the pain points of government. Like, do you think that youth and government is gonna influence that, like how you think about that challenge at all?
It's so funny because when I look back on things, sometimes for me at a glance, my path hasn't looked linear. But to me, I feel like in a sense it almost has. That's something that really drove me to this company is the clients they work with. All of them are we don't work with any businesses, any for-profit businesses. All of our clients, I mean, the bulk of them, as you said, really are in the local government space. And that's something that appeals to me. I've really been interested in government, in particular at the local level of how it affects people as citizens of our communities. So that's something that I feel like this truly appeals to me.
Mm. Yeah, that is amazing. I'm so happy that youth in government is still implemented in your life. That gives me much hope and much excitement, especially because youth in government has guided my path so much. So I would love to ask you what advice you would give to students who are curious about your own line of work that you're in now. And kind of, you said you went to the Wake's School of Business. So I would love to hear a little bit about your college major and how that has impacted where you are now.
Yeah, so I'll answer your second question first. Um, Definitely the Wake Forest School of Business has impacted where I am now. Um, And I think so. The program that I did is the what we call the MSM program, the Master of Science in Management program. It is a graduate program that you do, and for me, that was a great program because it was geared towards people who did not major in business as an undergraduate. And I think it does a great job of really marrying the two of uh, students who come in who are liberal arts minded, who've majored in different humanities majors or anything across the board, and how their minds and their lens of the way they see the world and how that can be applied in a business sense as well, and give them that business knowledge, the hard skills as well as the soft skills. So I felt that for me, kind of bringing those two sides together for me really opened up a different opportunities for me when it came to um, opportunities on the job market. But some advice that I would give people is to really find out what's important to you, um, and to really go for that. Um, Sometimes that might align in a career of I'm passionate about this subject and I can find a career in it. Sometimes you could be passionate about what a career might bring you, and that's okay. And you could find a career that suits you, that brings you what you'd want to get out of it that from there. But definitely, I would say definitely look inward and ask yourself and determine what you're good at and what your interests are, and really choose things from that perspective.
Hmm.
That's
So
good
how did you
advice.
do that? That is great advice. I'm taking it for myself. How did you look inward on that and find your passion?
Yeah, for me, honestly, kind of going back, I've been fortunate, whereas some opportunity for where I felt like were easy, not easy to get, but presented to me. Some people don't always know. And to be fair, there might be some jobs opportunities that don't exist now that people might have years in the future, the way that, technology progresses. But the first program that I did out of school was fellows program at Wake Forest, where recent graduates got to work with a member of the administration at the university. So I worked in the president's office at the time. Higher and still to this day, higher education is something that's a passion of mine. Learning about universities, not only as a school but as an organization, and what that means for their local communities, and how they operate in their own ways, beyond just the function of a school, which is their primary function, which is also very important. So honestly, from there, that really kind of gave me insight into different fields of work from there. Um, During my time as a fellow in the president's office, I got to see how the university interacted with the local government. Um, y- yeah, so how it interacted with the local government officials there, how it interacted with external constituents, people who are donors, people who are alumni, um, and really those things really kind of piqued my interest, and I felt like I really took things and ran from there.
That's neat. And I love how you said too that your career, a lot of people might look at it and think it's not very linear. But I'm curious if you had to think about your career and the time that you've been in the working world, like what's the through line? Like what for you is the thing that either has been like guiding you to pursue each new role or maybe something that each role has in common, but if there's like a through line to your career, would you describe it in that way?
Yeah, I would say that it's how whatever organization that I'm a part of, how it affects the people outside of it, if that makes sense. Um, so positions to me, I mean, who knows? I might eat my words in the future. Like I feel like my career, while I've had some experience, I feel like it's really just beginning. Um, but honestly, I'm really interested in how the effects of organizations and what they are and the people that they seek to influence, or the people that they seek to affect. Um, and so for me, I really want to kind of get my hands dirty and talk to the people. Um, and so I feel that I've been fortunate that in the roles that I've had, I've done that in different capacities.
That's fun. And I love that it's like a service-minded mindset that I'm hearing, but also um, for the or the organization, right? Like not just because you want to do good, but because you want the other organization to do good, in whatever success metrics that looks like for them. Like
Exactly. I
that
feel like people are
partnership
stronger
approach. Yeah,
together, rather than individually.
yeah, that's exciting. Well, cool. Joseph, this is really neat. I really love learning about what people do for work just in general. And so even though you've a month in, you're like, I mean, you've like really thought a lot and been really intentional with your career. I'm wondering if in the time that you've been, within youth and government and then college and on, I mean, what would you describe as like some of the most valuable lessons that have remained with you? Like, is there a piece of advice you've received along the way? You've worked with some really impactful people, like that sticks out to you. So either that lesson side or just like pieces of advice that have remained important to you.
Something that's remained important to me, and it's something that I feel like I still have to tell myself. I feel like the lesson sometimes isn't always just learned the first time that you hear it, or even that you've overcome something. I think it's, for me, an iterative process that I have to kind of keep telling myself and keep doing myself. But it's to really to go forward and to do it. Honestly, I remember sitting back at, the Youth and Government Conference, and, it's the end, getting towards the end of it and thinking like, you know what? Wow, like I could run for associate justice, but what if I don't get it? What if it's just a waste of time? Um, and I'm so glad that I took that chance and I went for it. I think that there's so many opportunities that are on the other side of taking the risk or taking the chance, or just trying. And I feel that sometimes I can have this mindset of, well, if I try for it and it doesn't go the way I want it to, well, then I wasted my time going forward in the first place. And I think that that's a mistake too, because there's so many lessons to learn within that. Sometimes it could be something that, for me, pointing the finger at myself, that maybe I could have done better. But also sometimes it may not be. Sometimes there are, external factors that
Mhm.
led to the result that happened. But that's okay. I think that you learn so much more if you can come back from that and try again or try something new or try something different. But I think that there's just so much power in just kind of going for it and taking a risk and not always having to be sure that you're, ready, whatever that means.
Yes, that is so true. So, as you were talking about running for your position and feeling like sometimes that you weren't good enough, or that if it didn't work out, you wouldn't feel like you did something right, I'm completely resonating with that as I am going to run for Chief Justice. But I saw a metric recently that had the first step being the biggest to success, and then all the little other steps was so little. And I tell everybody that I meet that we go through trials and tribulations either to grow our character or to change our circumstances. And I think that's exactly what you said. So, with that, I want to ask you if there was something you could tell your younger self, what would it be?
I think that's a good question. I would tell my younger self to keep going, to strive for more. I think that I don't know. There's always two sides to things. I think that definitely sometimes you can. I'm glad that I didn't stop at associate justice. And there's different perspectives. Sure, could I have gone for chief justice? Maybe if I had thought this out ahead of time, maybe I could have. But there's always something else. There's always ways to improve. There's always, ways to get better and to put yourself in the best position to do that. So definitely keep going and putting yourself in the best position to succeed.
That's good because I think, hindsight's 2020, right? We can always look back and like criticize ourselves for like doing or not doing something. But really, I love what you're saying about just like how can I just position myself today? And that feels, at least to me, pretty actionable. Like I can actually do something with that. Um, One of the things I'm curious about is as we think about students today that are involved in the youth and government program, that many of them are really like high achieving, you know, maybe have some perfectionist tendencies, maybe um, you're knowing laughter from Alicia. Um, and failure is one of those things that becomes really challenging. Like if you have an obstacle, even if it's not like a huge, like we can define failure in so many different ways, right? But I'm curious if there's an experience of failure or of something not going your way, that you'd be either willing to kind of tell us a little bit about, or a little bit about like what it taught you, if anything, from that experience.
Yeah, definitely. During my time as an undergraduate at Wake Forest, um, it was my goal to get into the business school. And unfortunately, I didn't when I first tried. You had to, after you get accepted to the university, you have to take a couple of courses and apply to the business school. And unfortunately, I didn't make it. And at the time, I thought, oh, wow, like maybe I'm not cut out for this. Or, I really had to take a moment to step back and reflect on my goals. And I even asked myself, why did I want to do this? And to be honest, at this point now, I'm glad that I didn't at that time. I mean, I later went on to go back and get a master's in business, but my time as an undergraduate, I majored in history, and I that was really influential or great to me because I think it's something that informs the way that I see things. History, I think, is important to me, and I believe it should be important to all of us. And having that background of more classes in history and writing a thesis, and I think that that's something that really changed my perspective and helped me be even better once I got to business school.
Speaking as a fellow history major, I'm a big fan. I think history is like all around us, and just yeah, super, super important for everyone to learn. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, Joseph, that's cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think a lot of times there's a lot of, yeah, in college you can not get a lot of things that you put yourself up for, and it can feel really hard. So thanks for sharing that with us. Um, for our like last round, we want to do like a really fun round of we were calling these like our roundup questions. So these questions have actually been generated by our officer team. So every single person who comes on the podcast is going to answer them. So I'm going to let Alicia take it away and ask you these questions.
Okay, so for our first question, is a this or that question. Fun Friday night or Governor's Gala?
Both were a lot of fun, but I'll have to say Friday Fun Night.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
already talked about that one, so I figured
Mhm.
that's your
The
direction.
bouncy houses are the best, so I can't disagree. Okay, so our second question is, what is your favorite or most impactful book that you've read?
I would say David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. Um, it's really about how disadvantages could be advantages in the long run. And sometimes advantages could also be disadvantages in the long run too. But that's just a great book that's really kind of shifted my worldview of, oh wow, this person, they got it all. They came with, the privileges and advantages, but sometimes they could work against them and what you may have could work in your favor.
That is sounds like such a valuable book. I actually saw Malcolm at the face-to-face series at Wake Forest, which is awesome. So, okay, for our last question, what other profession or profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Yeah, so one thing about me is I really like geography and I think about community on a regular basis. So I think being a city planner or something like that would be really interesting. Thinking beyond, individual real estate, but to a community and what your community could look like in a number of years and having plans for that and setting, things like I think that's really interesting. So that's something I feel like I would like to do in a
That is
different life.
so cool. Yeah, maybe in a different life, maybe in this life.
Maybe your next career. I mean,
Who
who knows?
knows?
Yeah. Joseph, oh my gosh, I feel like our time has just flown by. I feel like we could continue talking and learning so much from you. I'm just really grateful that you were interested in coming on the podcast and just sharing a little bit about your experience and the lessons that you've learned.
Yeah, well, thank you all for having me. I've enjoyed being here and definitely looking forward to really kind of getting back into youth and government and listening to some of the other ones too. I mean, I'm definitely interested to hear how other people have turned out from the program and more about the current students within the program as well. So definitely glad to be here and glad to be back involved.
Thank you for coming and speaking with us. You've been so great. It was amazing.
Yeah, no problem.